station in town. This is Power Talk 1210 KEVT, Sahuarita, Tucson.
2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. My show is predicated on the 4 L's: leadership, love, life, and lineage, and the ongoing discussion of real music being made by real artists. How far is it to the end of the universe? Maybe you'll get there by the Marrakesh Express or swung into the Oblivion. The universe is mind-expanding, and so is pure jazz, which makes all musics in an improvisational firestorm that incorporates European classical, and the only art form this country has ever had, African swing music. My guest today is one of the heaviest keyboardists of all time. He took all the influences of soul music, rhythm and blues, James Brown, modal, chromatic, chordal configurations of sound on album after album after album. You'll know when you get there, when you no longer have to figure out why you were put on this earth. When that purpose becomes evident, then you follow the path, like my guest did, like a steam locomotive coming down the track. Laying on his Hammond B3, playing great jazz tunes and up-tempo positive karma rhythms with cats from London where the Trinity and gigs with John McLaughlin came before. Being a leader, coming up with a melody, swinging the band, seeking to expand universal consciousness, one eardrum at a time. Whenever you're ready, Brian Auger, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you. How are you doing today, Jake?
It's wonderful to talk to you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to ask you something. Part of my show is predicated on the 4 L's. One of the L's is love, and I was hoping you could talk about your concept of love and how you incorporate that into your music.
Sure. I think the word is misrepresented and translated in the wrong way. I think of it as loving kindness. As you go among, as we go out there and we speak to really literally thousands of people. I just come back from a tour in a month in Europe, and I find that if you treat people with kindness, it is a reciprocal energy that comes back to you, and it seems that seems to be one of the staples in my life, is that energy is coming back, and when we play, basically we are sending that energy out into the audience. It contains all. I love to play. I love to lay my music, on the audience, and then get that energy comes rolling back at us in terms of applause and the way people feel, and it just goes round and round. So that's one of the concepts of it. Difficult to explain, but
no, it is. It's a hard concept, but I do feel it needs to be articulated, considering the times that we're living in. I think people seek love, or they find love, or they are in love, or were in love. But it's important to talk about it and not have it as such an esoteric thing. I should make a point there. Did Barry Dean, that bass guitar we heard on that floating key solo there, that was,
yep.
He was channeling Love Supreme on that. That is so awesome.
Well, that's where on the end of that tune, we actually chant.
you exactly.
and we also chant, a Love Supreme, because for a tribute to the great saxophone player Coltrane,
mm-hmm.
And also, one or two places what happens is we stop chanting and the audience actually does it for us. So there's so many people out there that know that little phrase that it's pretty it's pretty amazing when that happens.
Can you, it's just for the audience. I mean, did you get to see Train play live?
Did I what?
Did you get to see Train play live?
No, unfortunately, when he did come to England, I was busy, and but I still have a whole stack of his vinyl, original vinyl, and I'm still trying to play over some of his tunes. They are difficult exercises for us, so they kind of keep me up to scratch. One of my favorite ballads of all time is Naima, and just recently, when a piece of our equipment wasn't working properly, I decided that I would play that to the audience in Japan, and they all knew it, and you could have heard a pin drop.
I would have loved to have seen that live. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yes, and it's amazing to, music is, I think of it as our international language. To be able to go to Japan and play to people. I mean, my Japanese is very, I only know a smattering, but anyway, it doesn't matter because the music speaks directly to everybody. And it certainly did. I mean, I was taken aback at how enthused the audience was to hear that tune.
Here's a question.
So there we are.
Yeah, no. Here's a question. Because it's vexing to me. There's been, so much said about about terminology, and I just was wondering when was the first time you heard the word jazz, and whether you think that that's an appropriate term for the kind of music that you've played through your career.
Well, yeah. Well, the first time I heard that term was probably when I was about 4 or 5 years old, because my eldest brother was about 14 years older than me and had a collection of American jazz records. So the first things that I heard in part of my education was hearing these amazing artists, like Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Billy Eckstine, Sarah Vaughan, Louis Armstrong, of course, and people like Muggsy Spanier, Leadbelly, just a whole range of people, early people, Lionel Hampton, and what I discovered from that was that sometimes I couldn't quite. Some of the big band stuff was quite difficult for me to understand, but then a piece of it would make some sense to me, and I would ask my brother to play that one again for me, Jim, or play that little bit for me, Jim. And I realized that a very important lesson. Sometimes, in music, you don't get it the first time round. The more you listen to it, the deeper you get into it. All of a sudden, it starts to make a lot of sense. And I've tried to lay out my music in that way, so that there are reference points along the way that pick up your interest. As far as the name jazz, I mean, I grew up playing jazz piano, so that was my situation until I heard Jimmy Smith playing organ. And that really changed my mind and my life around.
How so?
I ended up, getting hold of a B3 and playing. And then in the 60s in London, everybody knew everybody. There was a big pool of pretty amazing people playing and bands, and there was a lot of jamming going on. I was never shy about doing that. And I met all sorts of people, from Keith Moon through Clapton, through Jimi Hendrix, through, all sorts of people. And when I wanted to put my music together, the idea I had was of a kind of funk-driven, very, powerful rhythm section, and overlaying some jazz harmony, and and lyrics with a positive message. And all I can say is people still ask me, what kind of music do you play? And I have to say, when I think about it, all I can say is I play music. I'm a musician. I'm a jazz musician. Well, maybe there are elements of jazz in it, but there are elements of Latin in it, and there are elements of rock in it. There are elements of R&B and some kind of classical stuff, although I'm self-taught. So, that's kind of difficult to pigeonhole.
No, I'll tell you something. You're just melting my heart right now, because I love, truly the stuff that you have done in your career. This album with, I just want to go back for a minute. The term jazz, inherently there has to be blues in the music. There's a lot of blues. And I don't, what I'm saying is the word has been, it's more of a world music today. I hear a lot more European classical elements in that music today, as opposed to the early 70s. I'm just looking at this album here. You're doing originals. You're covering Marvin Gaye tunes. You're doing Herbie Hancock tunes. It was just, it seemed to me that labels, when you first were starting, were not anywhere at all within the music. You go into a bookshop, you just file through the records. You could find a Spirit record or a British progressive record, followed by a Kingston Trio, followed by Brian Auger. There were no barriers that had gone up in music, and that's evident from the kinds of albums that you were able to make at that time. Is there validity in that?
Is what?
Is there validity in what I'm saying? I was born in 70.
Yes, well, there is, but looking at the development of jazz, if you go back, I really take it all comes from kind of New Orleans. And it comes from, I suppose, the songs that people sang as they were picking cotton and working in the fields, and that after the Civil War in America, there were a lot of band instruments that were left around because people were. The decimation of the armies was horrific, and but those instruments were kind of picked up, and people started to play. There were no schools to teach you, so it just kind of developed, and it developed out of those songs of the fields, and also the blues things that people would sing, because life was incredibly hard. And particularly for the black community in America, and then they would form little bands, and I suppose Dixieland music came out when people started to really play together in small groups. That developed later on into bigger and bigger bands, into actually big bands, and it contained those elements of kind of blues and blue notes, as we say.
Yes, yes.
And yes, it comes out of blues and develops because it develops the actual harmony starts to move forwards, and finally you get something like the run of the Blue Note records themselves, with Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers and Horace Silver and all those kind of, these are blues-edged hard bop, as it was called. It was just called hard bop. East Coast blues-edged, more advanced kind of music. And that out of that came, in the middle of that was Miles Davis and John Coltrane, and Coltrane's harmony just went to somewhere else. It began on, started to be scales rather than chords, and modal kind of movements. And Miles and Coltrane pushed that side of the harmony forward, and culminating in something like a Love Supreme, an album like Love Supreme, or, Kind of Blue, and moving on from there, just a run of amazing albums from Miles. I was lucky enough to be around to be able to buy those as they came out.
I know.
And over in England,
yeah,
we all kind of, anybody who was into jazz really, looked at all the same, heard all the same kind of sounds. And that was what, it was normal to play those tunes, or to try to,
Well, in the middle.
Anyway,
in the middle.
What do you call that then? I suppose jazz is, that is as good as anything.
Yeah, no, I think it's just, maybe it's like melodic invention. I just I feel like, I'm not trying to change terminology, but I just feel that word now has become so contorted, and there just hasn't not been a lot of advancement in modal music creation amongst minority communities too. That's a whole, we could take 4 hours on that, but during the time that Brian Auger was collecting hard bop, post bop blues, Blue Note records, he was also performing in his own band. So let's take a listen to this track, and then we'll come back and talk about it, okay?
Sure.
Change of mood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Can you talk about how Trinity came together?
I came through a band called there was a blues singer in England called Long John Baldry. Long John Baldry was kind of like although he was a blues singer, was sort of like a real star, and appealed to the pop world as well. And he was more or less a household name. He when I first bought a Hammond organ and was playing in a club up in Manchester called the Twisted Wheel, Baldry came in and asked me after we finished playing, if I was interested in talking to his management and agent, and after the weekend, and I did so, and they said, we're looking for somebody to build a band around Baldry and make sure that he actually gets to the gig on time, and that he rehearses new music. And he had a band called the Hoochie Coochie Men, who had got really totally out of control. There's some extremely funny stories about that. But Baldry... So I went to this meeting, and basically Baldry was into straight Chicago blues, but also a lot of early stuff from the New Orleans area, and he wanted he said I said no problem to get a band for you, and he said, well, there's this singer, my protege. I thought, well, that's a strange word to use. Anyway, he says, I've got this protege, a guy called Rod Stewart, who I'd like to have in the band. So I said, yeah, I know Rod. Rod was actually sat in, and Rod was kind of somebody who wasn't really attached to any band, but was, around about the scene, and hung out with different people, sat in with different bands and stuff. So I said, yeah, Rod sat in with my band a couple of times. The Hammond band.
Wow. Wow.
And so, but then I said, well, listen, what are you after exactly? This is a bit strange with two vocalists. Are you looking for a sort of Sam and Dave review or something like that? and they all looked at one another and said, well, I don't know. I never really thought about it, So I said, well, my manager and I were there at this meeting, and so I said, well, what about if we added, there's a young singer called Julie Driscoll who's answering Yardbirds fan mail in my manager's office at the moment, but I've cut a couple of singles with her, and she's got a great voice and is looking to get out on the road with a band. And so they said, oh, well, first of all, Rod said, well, when he heard about this, well, we won't be able to swear then, will we, you know? So, but the people, you know, Rod's manager and agent kind of reacted and said, well, how would that work? I mean, how do you see that? So I said, well, I mean, I could go on. I could play a couple of instrumentals. Julie could come on, and Julie sang anything she was crazy about. Nina Simone and Aretha Franklin and a lot of the Tamla Motown artists. And I said I could sing back up for Julie. Rod comes on and does his Sam Cooke impressions, and and we can sing. Both of us can sing back up for Rod. And then finally, Baldry makes it, and Baldry sings some kind of gospel, straight blues, or whatever he wants to do, and we all stay on and we all sing back up for him. How about that? And they said, wow. I don't think there's anything like that that's going on out there on the scene. And so all of a sudden, there we were in the steam packet going out, and it was incredibly successful. Coming out of that, after about 2 years, I had narrowed down, there was such a range of music that we were playing, I had narrowed down to a few elements what I wanted to go ahead with, and that was, I was trying to find a drummer that played like Bernard Purdie and a bass player that played like James Jamerson,
right,
who was on all the Motown stuff. Yeah, right. And as near as I could, guitar player who could play rhythm and also solo. And so I put something together like that, which was Mickey. I think it was it was Clive Thacker on drums, and a guy called Roger Sutton on bass originally, Vic Briggs on guitar, myself, and Julie made it known that she would like to join us. And so I thought, well, why not? That would be perfect. And that was how the Trinity started, and we pushed on down the road with that. It was such a mix, again, of jazz and a lot of R&B and different kind of rhythms. But a powerful funk rhythm section was what I was after. And
what kind of bands would you, when you went on tour, who would they link you up with? I mean, what other cats did you play with? I mean, because like you just described so eloquently, I mean, it was a melting pot across all genres. The Trinity was. So I'm just trying to figure out who else you'd be crossing paths with.
No, I mean, we were in touch. You know, we were in touch with all sorts of different bands because everybody knew everybody on the scene, and so I knew some of the Stones. Charlie Watts was a big jazz fan, so you know, we actually knew each other, and when we did get to speak, we we got on pretty well. A couple of the Beatles used to come down. Paul and Ringo would come to some of the gigs when we were playing clubs. And you know, it seems like it's kind of dropping names now, but it was a situation like that. So I got to see Clapton when he first stepped into the blues arena with John Mayall, and I had only seen him with the Yardbirds before that, and actually I was on the Yardbirds For Your Love session playing harpsichord, and you know, I had no idea that Clapton was such a great blues player. I was like, wow, that really is a change, you know. And so all this stuff really was kind of swirling around, and I, you know, with the organ band, you know, I opened for the Ted Heath Orchestra. At one point, Sonny Boy Williamson used to kind of just find out where we were and come and sit in.
Can you talk about?
It was a very live and very kind of creative scene, but that particular collection of people and the you know, with the underlying, you know, I could play in all the jazz tunes. So all of a sudden we started to get booked in '68 we started to get booked on, like things like the Berlin Jazz Festival. That was the most kind of purist jazz festival in Europe. Our record, our first album, Open, had kind of really done incredibly well, and there we were, following the Dizzy Gillespie Big Band at the Philharmonie Hall in Berlin. And, I was able to talk to these were icons, they were my idols, Dizzy Gillespie, to say hello. And, and Dizzy said, "Hey, man, you should come and jam with us." And I was taken aback because I was so in awe. I thought, well, that's so nice of you to say that, but I was scared to death.
Brian,
anyway,
Brian, I want to ask you a question because we talked about this prior to coming on the air. But why does the United States have a very hard time recognizing their only true art form? And do you think that the cats in Britain were always more tolerant of that art form and of blacks in general, Jamaicans in general? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is this, is that why do we play like we play? Because we were all listening to American artists, and mainly, the blues scene, all the guitar players, were, they had all these albums, like Robert Johnson and Freddie King, Albert King, B.B. King. You could trace all the kind of like lineage. The Beatles were into Chuck Berry, and also all the other, they listened to all sorts of other stuff. But basically, I think what I'm saying is, even on the jazz side, of course, what we were listening to it was, Tamla, Motown stuff, James Brown. When we went into a disco, it was American music from the black community. And that's what kind of triggered a lot of the British invasion bands. When we, I remember going over, when I first actually stepped onto American shores in New York, and I was playing in New York, and I heard that McCoy Tyner was playing at the village gate. And so I said, "Oh my God, I must go and see McCoy, man," who was another one of my heavy influences, and just an amazing player, So I went down there, and I was stunned because I thought he would be an absolute huge star here, like he was in Europe. And I think there were only I counted the heads, and there were about 20 people in the audience. I just couldn't believe it,
Wow.
And so it was obvious that, here were people like B.B. King, who was unknown until Eric Clapton kind of pointed him out to the young white community, and he became a big star. It was very strange to us. We couldn't understand a lot of it, I also, when I first came to the States and I was playing, I went out with the Headhunters, Herbie Hancock's Headhunters. Herbie Hancock was one of my absolute idols.
Wait, you're saying the Oblivion Express went out with Herbie with the
That's right. Yeah.
Oh my! Get me in the fifth row there.
Herbie at one point, the first thing he said when I shook his hand and said hello was, "You're the guy that did my tune," which was Maiden Voyage.
Wow.
And I asked him. I said, "Herbie, I don't understand this. I'm playing American music to the Americans, and it all seems to go down really well. But I don't understand why, things are as they are, I mean, why would a British band playing these things be accepted, and the original people that did it weren't exactly? Mm-hmm. They should be big stars." And he said, he said, "There's something in it. It seems to have gone through some kind of a filter, and the English bands coming back. I mean, they really believe in it, and it has this freshness. And there we are, you know. But it does, it's like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for putting me back in reality, because sometimes, you know, the idea that you did walk in and see McCoy in 1970 or whenever, you know, there's
right.
20 people there, and I mean, I understand, but it's like you see things pop up in society now, and you try to trace back why there is this kind of resentment or a lack of appreciation, or that's why I really wanted to talk, you know,
I think the other thing you have to understand was that there were all these FM stations,
right?
You know, and I mean, the amazing thing was, I mean, I'd get invited to the station, and the DJ would be playing all sorts of really hip stuff, and he would say, he'd say, well, what do you want to hear? You know, just pick out the stuff off the shelf, and we'll. And so the program was made up kind of like that. It was incredible. Those days, unfortunately, are gone. And what happened was, those stations were gradually bought up by a big conglomerate who decided that they were going to play top 40 and then top 20 only.
Yeah, no, it was the advent of
it was and that made a big difference, because you know the amount of really excellent music that was being broadcast, people didn't get to hear that anymore, and I think it kind of, you know, it went against the jazz kind of community, because bit by bit, people never heard of the new artists that were coming up.
Let's play something that doesn't get played on the radio anymore. It's another piece from you and your band, and then we'll come back and break it down. Okay?
Sure.
Cool.
Sure.
Brought to you by Abbott Taylor Jewelers, located at 6383 East Grant Road in Tucson. Go see Abbott Taylor for the finest jewelry in Southern Arizona. Music is also brought to you by the Stereo Hospital, located at 4044 East Speedway Boulevard. Contact Jeff Brucker, 520-722-4610. Bring your turntables in, receivers, stereo consoles, whatever you need. He'll fix it, and we really appreciate the support. All right, Auger, tell me about this. This is, I mean, I dance my younger daughter every day to this album. This album is the most hypnotic, funkiest soul, jazz, fusion. I don't like the word fusion, but it just rips. And I'm wondering, how nice was it to not have to play the bass lines, where you could just go off and just fly away on the organ?
Oh yeah. The rhythm section there. I mean, the conga player who came from Trinidad,
Lennox
really
Langton,
Lennox Langton,
mm-hmm.
And we had our drummer is Godfrey McLean, who's from Guyana, that particular tune is trying to make it real compared to what. I mean, the lyrics are still relevant today.
Absolutely.
And almost even more, you know. And it was a track that I'd heard on an album called Swiss Movement, which was Les McCann,
Absolutely.
Another great favorite of mine. And and Eddie Harris, the amazing Eddie Harris, they both became friends of mine. I played with Les only about 2 years ago over here in Los Angeles, and he was playing up the road in a club in the Santa Monica airport, and called me and said, "Hey, man, are you coming to play?" And so I said, "Well, what do you want me to do? Sit in for a couple of tunes?" No, man, bring your gear, So I ended up playing the whole evening with him, and that was Les, man. Les was always like that. He used to call me up when I lived in the Bay Area, and he was playing at Keystone Corner. And he was one of those keyboard players who had no qualms about asking another keyboard player, "Hey, yeah, come and sit in, man." And he told me at one point in San Francisco, he said, "Yeah, Roland have given me another kind of electric piano, man. So, come down and play, and make sure you bring a clean shirt.
Did you, is that the small private airport at the Santa Monica, the Typhoon?
That's right.
Yeah, I saw Emil Richards, his band, play there. That is I cannot believe you were playing there with Les McCann.
Right, man. Neither could I.
All right, here's Auger. We're going to have to do at least 2 or 3 more sessions together, but I really want you to talk to the audience about this concept, is the idea of how do you deal with your insecurity and how do you overcome it?
Your insecurity, I really don't know, man. I think, in the words of one of my tunes, if you can face your fears and make your problems scatter, if you don't win today, it really doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Because, baby, when you do, then, brother, I'll see you right back at the beginning again.
But I mean, I want you to talk about struggle, because I feel like the youth, especially in today's world, what they consider struggle, it can be easily overcome, but you have to be resourceful and you have to be fearless. And I was hoping you could talk about this, a period, maybe just one example early in your career or in your life where you realized what your path on this planet was, and how empowering that was.
Sure. Well, I mean, music has been with me since I was about 3 years old, and I used to play on a piano called a pianola, which had paper rolls of music that you would hook up inside and pedal at it was driven by air, and you could pedal the pedals. And I used to stand on the pedals, hang on to the underside of the keyboard, and I figured out how to, hook up these piano rolls, and we had everything, from we had all the operas, for example, and things like Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata and country and all sort of ragtime, all sorts of things, and that was music. It was something that was around me all the time. And then my brother had this collection of American jazz stuff that I would listen to, and my elder sisters were crazy about Billy Eckstine and bands like the Ink Spots.
Of course.
And I met one of them in New Zealand about 3 years ago, one of the survivors, and of course Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby and Nat King Cole, of course, So there was such a huge kind of, mix of things going on, and I started to play the piano. We went through the Blitz in London, and our house was blown to pieces at one point, and I was evacuated away from the family for about 2 years. But fortunately for me, this was just before my 5th birthday. Fortunately for me, the people that I was evacuated to had a piano, so I was able to mess about and continue, just playing around. So it's a thing that's been in my life. It's also been, a retreat when I was upset about something or other. I could always go and just lose myself in playing for the evening, and it's just been a great guide. What you put in, you get out, and if you don't put anything in, you don't get anything out. So it's been a discipline, and to stumble across Charlie Parker 251 Harmony on my own was like, I should have shouted Eureka and run through the streets.
Someone else was talking about
those things
that.
are so incredible to me, and it was just playing and finding my way.
Well, Brian Auger, we'll be in touch. I definitely want to continue the conversation, and I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to to all the people here in Southern Arizona, all over the world about,
sure.
you know, your
yeah. All I can say, man, is it has been my privilege and my great pleasure to to be a musician, and that's what I call myself. Somebody just asked me on the last tour, what kind of music, are you playing? This is an old lady in one of the festivals that we did in Italy. Said, Signore, I'll translate it for you. I hear that you're a very great musician. And I said, not really, Signora. I'm just a musician, And she said, "Oh, I see. Yeah, well, I'm going to be listening tonight." Great, She was probably in her late 70s or something, But basically, it's that, and to be able to communicate with so many different people in so many different countries, and watch the magic of music work on people who are standing right there, and to be able to read the effects of music on their faces, and just the joy of being able to play free. And there's nothing, I don't know why Americans shun their own contribution to the arts.
I do not want to truncate this. We'll get into it, but I just want.
Right, but the only thing I do want to say is
go.
this: is there, what you do is we're playing a melody, and then over that same structure of chords, we're making up freely a new melodies. That's all we're doing in jazz. It's improvisation. And if America's going to talk about freedom, well, how much more free do you want to be than that as an artist?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was talking to a horn player, Jack Folks, the other night. He said the same thing. Jazz is freedom, and if you don't have that, I mean, then you don't have freedom. And I mean, it's. And
also, it's improvisation. It's there that new ideas develop for more tunes, and and when you look back, people like Beethoven was a great improviser. He'd go to a party and just ask somebody to give him 3 or 4 notes, and then he'd make up a whole thing on it. The great composers like Mozart, for example, would not only improvise and make these melodies up, but be able to orchestrate them all and write it down at the same time. It all comes through improvisation in the end, So
well,
there we are. What can I say?
No, I mean it's a ball. I had a ball, and I'll give you a call later, my man. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thanks so much, man.
All right, take it easy, Brian.
Yeah, take care now.
Bye. Well, folks, so we're joined now by the headmaster of Greenfield Country Day School. It's an honor to have her in the studio. Becky Cordier, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. I wanted to ask you, in the 21st century, can you talk a little bit to the audience about leadership qualities that kids need in the 21st century, and how does Greenfield prepare those kids for those leadership skills?
Well, we don't know. There's a lot of unknown in the 21st century. What's coming around the corner? Trends can give you an idea of what's happening, and to try to do the best we can for our students. Leadership is a big deal. We want kids who aren't followers unless they have to be. So leadership involves confidence, and so creating an environment where they feel confident that it's okay to make a mistake, that failures are okay, they're stepping stones, that's a real honest environment for them. We want them to go out and innovate and think of new ideas, and that takes some personal risk. So that whole environment, that feeling of comfort is key to what we do to kind of springboard them into what we don't know.
You started in 1986 at Greenfield?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in maybe second grade or third grade, and I mean, I guess I'd like to know how things have changed in your mind in education, and how Greenfield has adapted to it in the last, I don't know, couple decades.
I went to public school in Tucson, and through the Amphi School District, and so Wetmore Elementary School, Amphi Junior High School, Amphi High School. I was astounded in 10 years after going back to Amphi High School, the changes that were made.
Like what?
The campus was a lot more locked down, a lot more fences. I think that there were some good changes in terms of the academics and the standards. That's the kind of thing that's happened since then, even up until now. I think that's the biggest change in the public school education, is that the standards that have been placed on schools, which is both good and bad.
I mean, I feel I've been around, I've taught at different places, state schools, I've been in public schools, I've been in different districts. But when I come to Greenfields, I mean, I haven't even gone onto the campus. I mean, it's an amazing facility, but there appears to be a real beacon of light there. Very positive place, very warm, a lot of love. And for me, in this time that we're living in, I can't think of anything more important than love.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
It's a village. The teachers care about what they're doing. They have a lot of respect for what they're doing. They are thinking about not just solving a problem right now for the next day. They're thinking about how that student is going to get through that same situation ongoing. And so that creates quite a relationship that, again, it comes back to having kids be surrounded by people who care about them, who are supporting them, who are learning about them, knowing them, finding out where their strengths are, and celebrating them, putting the spotlight on.
Greenfield Country Day School starts on Wednesday, this Wednesday coming up. And,
Yes.
Talk a little bit about, because I agree with you, this idea of there's all this sort of Band-Aid kind of thing that in our society now, where it's like, stay in the moment. We have to stay in the moment. We can't look to the future. These problems need to be solved right away. But in essence, that's not how innovation happens. That's not how creativity happens. And that's not your philosophy. So what are some of those forward-thinking programs? What are some of the things that you're looking forward to in this 2014-15 school year?
I'm looking forward to a sort of investigating a global education idea, something that is, we've always had languages that, and our kids learn French and Spanish from kindergarten up through high school. Lots of our students have graduated and gone on to do things in different countries, France and Latin American countries, because they feel so comfortable with the language. We want to think about how that will contribute to their future, and spread that out a little bit. So we're talking with, right now we're talking with a school in China, actually. A gentleman, the principal of a school in China, invited me there this summer to come and take a look, and they have something real forward-thinking going on, which sort of brings us into the loop a little bit. They are, they have figured out that Chinese students, in order to do well in American schools, need English. That's the thing that they're lacking. And English is real hard. The language is real hard. So they've done an excellent job of improving their English skills. And one of the best things that happened, and he took me all around the whole country to the Great Wall and to see the warriors and everything. But the best thing that happened was talking to the students at that school. It was like talking to students at my school. Their English is good. They have dreams. They have goals. They like what they're learning. He's offering a different kind of educational experience for them, one that's more Greenfieldsy, more American.
Well, yeah, I know. it's not just test based. It's not just grade based.
Right.
Is that right?
Well, China is
I know.
notoriously test based. They're real good at taking tests, and the Greenfields experience is finding other ways of assessing student progress other than test and test.
You
and
know, that I want you to talk about that because we just talked to Brian Auger. You know, I mean, there was no jazz academia when he was coming up. They made it up the rules, which now it seems people are petrified to sort of allow that kind of freedom. But there's a lot of experiential learning that goes on at Greenfields. I mean, obviously, tests are important, studying, in the class. But how often do you get the kids outside of the classroom? Can you give an example of something where they are learning beyond the textbook?
Oh yeah, every day they're outside the classroom. In the lower school, we have a chicken coop, but the first graders study the life cycle, and so they have eggs in an incubator that they wait for them to hatch in the spring, and it's crazy in the first grade when they do hatch. It's a crazy day, but then they then they're caring for them as they go through the different stages and get ready to go into the chicken coop. So that's one life cycle. And then they collect the eggs, so they see the whole life cycle. Another thing that I was interested, I was taking a parent, talking to them about experiential education, and we got to the playground, and the second graders were out with these magnets picking up all the iron in the dirt. That's what they were studying, and instead of just reading about it, looking at some pictures, they were out there actually doing it. That was a perfect example. So, and there's a lot to be said for the fact that we've got multiple age groups on the campus too. One of the coolest things is when our biology class is dissecting squid, they invite the fourth graders over because they're studying oceans too, and they get to do it together. It's pretty awesome.
Talking to Becky Cordier, and this is going to be your 7th year being the headmaster of the school? Third. Okay, so your 3rd year, and how has this position changed you personally?
Let's see. I understood problems before, actually embraced them, because I'm a musician. I'm a music teacher, and that's how I started at Greenfields. And that's one thing about putting on a performance. When you get to that performance level right before showtime, it's one problem after another and solving it, and it's exhilarating how to figure out how to solve all those problems. So the type of problems associated with putting on a musical as opposed to running a school are different, but it's one problem after another. And so I think it's changed. It's broadened my view. It's made me be more appreciative of many perspectives, many perspectives, and that they all are valid. It's made me know that there's a nugget of truth everywhere, and from anyone that's talking to me, no matter what, No, I mean, it's important. Yeah, no, I mean, open-mindedness or just perspective, I think in general helps people grow, and I've had that in my life. I continue to grow as a person, but I wanted to add, I wouldn't even know Becky without somebody very special, Nancy Masland, who was the headmaster of Greenfield Country Day School from 1972 to 1980. The courtyard is named after her, and I got connected with Nancy, and now I have Becky in the studio. I just was hoping you could share a little bit of sage and spirit about Nancy Masland. About Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
She is a remarkable woman. The thing that sticks with me is the devotion that her students have for her, even to this day. I see some of her students at our alumni events, and they just have the fondest memories of their time at Greenfields with Nancy. And it's not just at Greenfields, it's always with Nancy. So I knew that she was the kind of headmaster that was very hands-on involved with her students, not just running the school from on high, but down there with them. And they have a real deep respect and devotion to her, and she has the same same for them. She's incredible. She can manage. Still, she's got things going on, new things happening, new ideas that she puts into motion. She's helped the new Abbey School get off the ground this year, and that's a real important school to have in our community. So I can't say enough good things about Nancy. She's great.
As the school year gets rolling, we'll have you come back, but I really appreciate you taking the time, Becky, coming in here, all right?
Having me here.
All right.
Always nice to talk to you, Jake.
All right, Becky. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
A gig.
And ain't got no gig, whatever you call it. You ain't got nothing but the blues no way, baby. Either your old lady gonna do yagging you and arguing with you, telling you once you get up and do something. Now go to the steel mill, and you know you're gonna do singing that music and blues too. So sometimes you really don't know what to do. And when you get worried, all you can do is reach and grab your harmonica and try to play the blues a little bit. Here's the blues.
Here we go.
Welcome to the hottest new talk station in Arizona. Power Talk 1210, KEVT, Sahuarita, Tucson.
Do you live with stress? If you have no